Join us today as we explore options for the Green Bay Packers at offensive tackle. You may want a wide receiver or defensive tackle, but the Packers still need offensive line depth. Let's jump in.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby. It's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm cash.
Welcome in another episode of Sounds Gouda. Thank you everybody for coming back and taking a listen to us. I am one of your two co-hosts. My name is Rob Ralph. Next to me is my best friend as always, Jordan Olson. We do have new content every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please make sure to like, sub, and follow us if you are able. And then we're on the socials as well. That should be below on the banner. But today we are continuing our deep dive series. This time will be specifically on tackles. So offensive tackles and not interior or centers or guards or centers for the Packers. So that's what we're going to be trying to do today for the draft. But if you did not know, our Packers' current offensive line room is Rasheed Walker, the newly signed Aaron Banks, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Jordan Morgan, Jacob Mock, Kadeem Telfort, Travis Glover, and Donovan Jennings. But real quick, before we get into that, we have been teasing this out as a possible resource for everybody, and we are trying to hit 500 subscribers. So if you're able to help us get to that, we are going to be able to share that out freely to our community, and we know that that would be a great asset, especially if you're attending the draft in person. I know Jordan has alluded to this on previous podcasts, but it's a much different experience. You don't get the ticker, you don't get the best players available, you don't even get the commentary from the TV and the announcers from the experts. And Jordan and I have been both putting in a ton of time with this too as well, so we think that you'll find it very valuable. So help us out. We would genuinely appreciate it. But before we get into that, we have a lot of context and some other stuff to be able to allude to as far as the big board info, thresholds, and tiers. And I'll turn it over to Jordan to discuss a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Rob. Let's dive into that big board and let's have a little discussion before we get into the players themselves. But just remember in today's exercise, we're probably not going to spend much time discussing prospects that will go safely in the top 10 or top 15 like Will Campbell. We are still waiting on quite a few players pro day testing. Something we did different this week is we would have had a lot of incomplete profiles or white tier players. So we went ahead and because we have some arm length and we have some other information, we tried to put them in a tier so we won't have any white tier players or incomplete profile players on this show. But our other tiers goes as follows. We have our red tier, which has too many red flags. The Packers probably won't draft those players. Our orange tier has multiple concerns or deficiencies. We think it would be unlikely the Packers would draft those particular players, but not outside the realm of possibility. Our gold tier is one concern, but outside of that concern, they are a great prospect for the Green Bay Packers. And then our green tier is, 100% or nearly 100% Packers types. If they have a deficiency listed, everything else that makes them the player they are is too great to overcome that. So, we're going to put them in that green tier regardless. So talking over some of our known thresholds for offensive tackle or offensive lineman in particular, the Packers really value players who have good agilities, especially if they want them to play tackle and they want them to be on an island. They can get out and they can move against some of these athletic pass rushers that come in all shapes and sizes. So they want to see a short shuttle of less than 4.75. They typically want these players to have 34-inch arms, but in a minute I'm going to share some data that might debunk that a little bit. They've never or hardly ever drafted a player that's more than 325 pounds. So some of the big, 335, 340 pound players of the world are probably just not going to be Green Bay Packers. They like their Packers to be a very specific height, and that's specifically between 6'4" and 6'6". This is something that they've been pretty firm in But I think if you get too short, you have a harder time holding up against, players with that long leverage and those long arms. Typically, if you're shorter, you're not going to have arms long enough to get out into the players on that defensive side. And if you're too tall, it's hard to have position versatility, which we've talked about over and over again from this offensive line unit. One other agility, they really like to see a sub 7.78 3-cone. And this is kind of the kicker. They like to draft tackles and really any offensive lineman outside of guys they view as true centers that have played left tackle for significant snaps in their college career, because for the Packers, they view that is the premium position. And if you're not even have been able to be the best offensive lineman on your team, how does that translate to the next level, facing against that highest competition, whatever level of competition you played? So Rob, before we get into the players too, we put together a little chart with some of the Packers' previous draft picks and found a couple interesting things. You want to share a couple of our thoughts or findings from that?
Yeah, so we all remember the legend of Brian Bulaga, but he was drafted in round one. He was a left tackle. He had a RAS of 7.33. His arms were 33.25 inches. Jordan Morgan had a relative athletic score of 9, and he had 32.875 arms. He was a left tackle, played left tackle at Arizona, and he was drafted in round one. Zach Tom, really good relative athletic score, 9.59. Again, 3.25-inch arms. He was drafted in round four, but also played a ton of left tackle as well as center. Uh, Elton Jenkins, RAS score of 9.34 and 34-inch arms, drafted in round two. A ton of positional versatility, as we all know, for Elton Jenkins, and probably will be our center, but he played center, 26 starts at center, 5 at left tackle, and 2 at left guard, so a ton of positional versatility with him. David Bakhtiari, the man, the myth, the legend, the great true Green Bay Packer. He had a relative athletic score 6.72 with 34-inch arms. He was drafted in round four. He was a left tackle. Here's where it gets kind of interesting. We all remember Royce Newman. He was drafted in round four. He had an 8.72 relative athletic score, 32.25-inch arms, but he played right tackle in college. And then Derek Sherrod. Derek Sherrod was drafted in round one, played left tackle. He had a 6.86 relative athletic score, but he had out of this world arm length and reach, go gadget arms at 35.37 inch arms. And then Josh Sitton, drafted in round four, but 9.74 relative athletic score. And here's another interesting one too for him. He ended up being an all-pro, Green Bay Packer for many years, only 30.74-inch arms, and played right tackle and right guard. So interesting there too, but they definitely like to take the left tackle, make sure that they play left tackle. They have taken some right tackles, and that has hit and or missed for them, i.e. Royce Newman, who they drafted in the fourth round, but then Josh Sitton, he played right tackle and right guard. He had extremely short arms, but was also, an all-pro for them at right guard. So,
Yeah, what do I make of that data? Because I'm always trying to analyze what things mean, and say, hey, a lot of this data goes against the thresholds that you all just shared, and I agree with you, which is why I put together this to do some exploration. One, I've come to the conclusion that Ted Thompson was much more willing to take a player that had a major outlier if he really believed in that player, right? Thus, you see Brian Bulaga with a little bit lower RAS. And you see Josh Sitton with those really, really short, baby arms that he had. But, you also, he's drafted in the fourth round. And I think
yeah.
they clearly viewed him as a guard. But you know what? Josh Sitton played some tackle for us at times. And he was a very versatile player. You see, and David Bakhtiari as well also was a lower RAS athlete, although in the fourth round, you kind of start to get to the point where you're willing to make a compromise, but he did have the other things you were looking for, the 34-inch arms, the extensive experience at left tackle, at a top program. So, kind of take that all into consideration. It looks like Gutey values the higher end athlete a little bit more. And Rob and I were talking about this on the show. It shouldn't be the end all be all, but it does give you a better chance at hitting on a player. So we can't necessarily disagree with that strategy. But just some differences there. And just to go to show you, the 34-inch arm length is not firm, but I think that's where they like to be. So if we're getting into the 33 and a half inch plus, we're probably, they probably like what they see from that prospect. So let's dive in. I know that's why you're all here. You want to hear about the players that we could draft and hopefully will draft. I'm just going to hit our red tier players, which in this exercise, actually, there wasn't a lot of guys that we just blacked out and said, hey, the Packers won't draft them. But there are two that we discovered. Brandon Crenshaw Dickinson from Florida. He's old, he's 6'7", and had an atrocious RAS of 2.92. That's just way too low and not an NFL athlete. So they should really stay away from him. And Holland Pierce, there's going to be a lot of teams intrigued by his size. He's a mammoth man, 6'8", 344, but the Packers will not draft a player that's because they're really pigeonholed into hoping that he's a really good tackle, and it does not have any interior versatility. So, Rob, why don't you hit us with our orange tier players?
Yeah, so first up in our orange tier, but Mr. Armand Mabo out of Mizzou, very young, not even 21 years old yet. A little bit on the shorter side at 6'3" and pretty heavy at 332 pounds, but has a tremendous RAS score of 9.89 and a great 40 time of 4.91 seconds. Again, too, like Jordan was alluding to in the arm length, but 33.12 inch arms. What can we say about him? He's a zone blocking king. He's very explosive. Some cons for him: struggles to anchor and needs to maintain and finish some more blocks. And then also another caveat too in here, we just talked about how they like to take left tackles, but he was a right tackle in college, so might be a big reason as well too that he is in this tier. But he is projected to go in the first round and even top 15. So a lot of things to like about him.
So next on this list, Bronte Estrie from Minnesota. Totally butchered that, but I did my best. Why maybe he's in our orange tier? He is a little bit heavy at the combine. He did weigh 331 pounds. And why you say, hey, you just told me they would do outliers. I don't think that they do outliers on height and weight as much as you would like to think. So I guess if they, feel like he can play at 25 pounds, they might, but I think that's going to, be a pretty big ding against him. He did test well, though, had a 9.37 RAS, had a good 40 time, questionable agility side to side, totally not out of the realm, but didn't have the best short shuttle or three cone, but he's got, I'm trying to make sure I'm looking at the right line. Yeah, he's got good footwork, good overall speed, and a good run blocker, but has some bend issues at the waist. So not sure that they'll dabble into Estrie.
Donovan Jackson is next in the orange tier from Ohio State. He's only 22 years old. He's projected around round 3, 315 pounds, 8.99 RAS score. His shuttle is 4.84. Obviously played at a big blue chip program in Ohio State. They just won the championship this last year. Very, very good in pass protection. Did move to left tackle after Simmons did get hurt. Some cons, needs to put in some more consistency into finishing some more plays, but played some left tackle, left guard, and might be a possibility. So
Jackson was primarily a left guard, but it does bode well to show that they did feel confident in moving him to tackle and that he did fairly well with that after in that role. So it hurts a little bit because we've mocked him a few times, but Marcus Mabo has a few red flags for us. People are kind of projecting him to move to the interior at the next level. He's on this list because I still think he has some swing tackle versatility, but Marcus Mabo is 21 years old, will be 22 on draft day. He's from Purdue, 6'5", 303. Big knock against him is his very short arms. He has 32-inch arms, almost down to the, eighth of an inch. So will they draft a guy that high in the second or third round that's going to be a guard, especially after we just signed Aaron Banks? I think that's where I have questions about him in this process is they're probably looking for a tackle on day 1 and day 2.
Next in our orange tier, Chase Lunt out of Yukon, projected around round 5. Extraordinarily tall. Again, 6'8", and then for that height, only 304 pounds, but his arm length is 32.65. He's only committed 4 penalties in 4 years and does have decent footwork, so that's really good. But he's light, played at a smaller school, lacks the size and strength in his lower half. And also, too, as we just have been alluding to, but played right tackle in college and was a Senior Bowl invite.
He's wiry for
Wiry.
an
Pretty tall.
for an offensive lineman, yeah. We'll see. But Xavier Truss from Georgia is an extremely versatile player. He's played right tackle, right guard, left guard, hasn't played the coveted left tackle. He's older and taller. He's kind of projected to be a 7th round pick. I kind of doubt, even with his versatility, with his height and his weight, that they will take him. But, totally wouldn't be surprised if, they get desperate later on. The Packers don't operate out of desperation, so that's maybe not a great thing for me to say. But if they're really seeking a player that has versatility late, maybe Xavier Truss. But he's kind of somebody that I don't believe the Packers will target at this point in time.
Jalen Travis next, and our last one in the orange tier from Ohio State. He's a big dude, 6'7", almost 340 pounds, 9.08 RAS score, ran a 5.14 40 time, really good arms, 34.87 inches. Very explosive in the first step and his first step, and definitely a mauler in the run game. But some cons: can struggle with change of direction, and anchor needs a lot of development. But he also has a little bit of positional versatility. He's played left tackle and right tackle. He was a Senior Bowl invite, but probably in the realms of a UDFA if the Packers wanted to go his route. So,
Yep. Awesome. So let's jump into guys that the Packers hopefully will draft or be interested in drafting. And there's been a lot of mocks about this guy starting back up in round 1 territory. But Josh Simmons from Ohio State. The tough thing about Josh Simmons right now is that he had an ACL injury in 2024. And we've alluded to that. And that's why Donovan Jackson got a chance to slide over there. But there's a lot to like with Josh Simmons' tape. He's played left tackle early on in his career at Ohio State. He started there as a redshirt freshman. He's been playing at that level for a couple years now. He's 22 years old, 5'3", 17, has 33-inch arms, so his arms are long enough. Great balance, great feet, plays through the whistle. He's really everything you're looking for in a prospect, except for the fact that he is coming off an ACL injury. So his medicals would be the only thing holding him back from being a green tier player. And the fact that the Packers don't have the full athletic profile on him, which we've alluded to before. The Packers haven't drafted a player without a full athletic profile in the first round in a very long time. So maybe they have him in for a top 30 visit. We haven't seen that yet, but that's what we know about Josh Simmons.
Next up in the gold tier, Gray Zabel at North Dakota State University, Senior Bowl darling, only 23 years old, 6'6", 312 pounds. We are missing a lot of agilities with him for him too. So I believe, probably him and his agent think that they did so well at the Senior Bowl that they're going to kind of let this ride out. And not let any sort of these other testing and these numbers affect his draft stock. But, for him, shorter arms at 32 inches, so that could be a big knock on him. But, he did play left tackle, left guard, right tackle. He's got a ton of positional versatility. Very explosive in the first step, stays away from penalties. He's got good hips and good anchoring too for him. But some cons, if he's going to be inside at the next level, short arms, like I was just alluding to, and can get beat off the edge too at times as well. But I still believe that Gray's able, if you're drafting to be an interior lineman and or a center for the future for the Packers, I think you could get a real good steal here for him, and obviously showed out at all levels of competition at the Senior Bowl. So
yeah, we cheated. We kind of left him on the list, even though most people think he's interior. I do think with his versatility, he's somebody that could be a swing tackle, though. And because of that, he's still on this list. He do a lot of things for the Green Bay Packers. And he is projected currently at the back end of the first round, early part of the second round right now. Jumping down into the third round for our gold tier, we get to a guy that Jeff Hafley's going to have a lot of familiarity with, and we'll see if that has an influence. But Ozzy Trepillo from Boston College, the big knock on him is how tall he is. He is 6'8". So at times he plays with his head down and he's a little bit slow turning, being such a large individual. But his testing was really good at 316. He ran a sub 4.7 shuttle time and he ran a 7.713 cone. So he has the movement skills that the Packers are looking for. And he primarily played right tackle in college, but has played left tackle as well. So maybe the familiarity, the positional, swing tackle versatility, the testing will maybe override in the third round the fact that he's a little bit tall. I would be willing in the third round to take a taller guy that I think can be an NFL tackle for sure. So Ozzy's definitely on my board.
Next up in the gold tier, and one that we've mocked more than a few times on some of our mock draft series. Shameless plug, but go ahead and check that out. Projected around round 3, Wyatt Millum out of West Virginia. One knock on him, he's a little bit older, at little over 23 years old, but 6'6", 313 pounds, has an 8.01 RAS score, 40 time 5.27, and then shuttle 4.67. His arms, a little bit on the shorter side, 32.125 inches, but he did play left tackle and was a Senior Bowl. He's got good balance, good hands, good feet, smart player, and then a reliable run blocker. Probably best served as switching inside at the next level. Can have a slower first step. Looks a little heavy sometimes in pass protection and can get in trouble when left on an island. But I know that I've loved the tape from what I've seen from him, and he doesn't give up many pressures or many sacks, it seems like. So would really love the Packers to be able to get him in round 3 or round 4. So
Yeah. So our next gold tier player, Cameron Williams from Texas. He's young at 21 years old, 6'5", 317. We're still in the third round projection here. And he's got really long arms, 34.5-inch arms. So he's got that length that you're looking for. He does, we're missing some testing on him right now. And depending on if we get that, that might move him, up or down to either our orange or green tier. But right now, he's a gold tier player. He has a finisher's mentality. He's got an explosive first step. He does show a lack of strength at times, and he struggled with penalties, particularly in 2024. He's also not the best in the gap blocking scheme. I'm going to guess that when it's all said and done, he's going to end up in our orange tier. But he has the size, the weight, the arm length that the Packers look for at this point in time. So, they may be interested in Cameron Williams especially if he falls to the fourth round. So
next up in the gold tier and projected around round 4, Anthony Belton out of NC State. Don't have an age on him, but 6'6", really, really heavy. So this is one of the cons on him, that 336 pounds. Does have a pretty good RAS score of 8.16. His 3-cone is 7.77, so that's good, and he does have good arms at 33.87 inches. Really good at getting to the second level and stone walls, pass rushers, but some cons on him, heavy, off balance, late hands in the pass protection, and not a great gap blocker, but has played left tackle. So there is that caveat there, and he would be good possibility for the Packers around round 4, round 5. So
yeah, Jalen Rivers is next from Miami. And he was a Senior Bowl guy. He met with the Packers, and I think they spent some extensive time with him at the Senior Bowl. He's 6'5", 325, and has great big long arms at 34, almost 35 inches. He does have tackle guard versatility, and he is a big downhill mover of people in the run game. Where you get into trouble with Jalen Rivers is he shows that he's an average athlete on tape. His feet are a little bit slow. His 40 time is a little bit slower. But you're looking at a guy who's likely to be a fourth or a fifth round selection. I like Jalen Rivers a lot, and clearly the Packers have some level of intrigue. The fact that he's a Senior Bowl guy kind of cements that, him into this gold tier on this list. Otherwise, he might be more of an orange tier player, but a lot to like about Jalen Rivers. Would not be surprised with him as a fourth round or fifth round selection.
Next up in our gold tier, Logan Brown out of Kansas, projected around round 5. A little bit on the older side, 23 years old plus, 6'6", 315 pounds, 9.46 RAS score, 40 time of 5.18, good shuttle at 4.51, 3 cones 7.75. Right there too, within the threshold too of the arms, but 7.5 inches, so almost there for the 34 inches. I don't think that it would knock him out. Good all-around blocker in 2024 and a former 5-star recruit. He did play right tackle. He was a Senior Bowl invite too as well, but he's a little bit on the older side and was dismissed from Wisconsin. And also limited games started, so some experience might be coming into play there too for Logan Brown. But again, somebody too that I think both Jordan and I love quite a bit, and would be a decent pick for them later on day 3.
Yeah, the more and more I learn about Logan Brown, he's been like at one point in time he was a green tier player, and the more I learn about some of his red flags, I don't know. By the time we get to the draft, he might be an orange tier player, which would make me sad because he's a guy in the middle of the draft that I like, but I don't know. He's starting to have too many things stack against him. We will see. Emory Jones Jr. from LSU. He's young at 21 years old, 6'5", 315, great big long arms. Has good anchor in the pass pro. He has 3 full years of starting experience. We are missing most of his speed and agility testing, so hopefully we can get more of that before the combine. What shows on tape, though, is he does get exposed against speed rushers, which relates to some balance issues, and he's not the world's best run blocker overall. So hoping to learn a little bit more about Emory Jones, but somebody I view as draftable for the Packers right now.
Next up in the gold tier, John Williams out of Cincinnati, projected around round 6 or round 7. We do not have an age on him, but 6'5", 322 pounds, only a 7.54 RAS score, 5.17 40 time, and a shuttle 4.72, 3 cones 7.93. And then again, too, almost at 34 inches, but 33.875 inches for him. But great pass blocker, 3 sacks only allowed in the last 2 years starting. Did play left tackle. Some cons for him, poor in the zone and gap schemes, but a decent possibility for the Packers later on. So
Yeah, when I was putting together this list, he was originally in my green tier until I started to learn a little bit more about his run blocking. And I just feel like Matt LaFleur is valuing, getting this run game going so much. We saw that with the addition of Aaron Banks. And if this guy really struggles in the, run blocking game, even as a 6th-round pick, 5th, 6th-round pick, I'm not sure that they're going to insert a poor run blocker into this offense right now. Jack Nelson, we have little to no testing about him. Really, the only reason that I have him in this gold tier is because he was on the Senior Bowl. He's got nearly 34-inch arms. He's 314 pounds. He has a lot of starting experience at left tackle, 3 full years, and only allowed 1 sack in 2014. So he is a little bit poor in the gap blocking scheme. And he does, with his height at 6'7", he does let people get underneath his pads a little bit easy. But we'll see if we get any testing from Jack Nelson. But we are under the 6th, 7th round projection. Kind of think anything goes. Most of these players are projects or have things that they'll need to develop for at least 2 seasons to be a contributing NFL player.
Next up in our gold tier, projected around round 7, Carson Vinson out of Alabama A&M. Don't have an age on him, but he's very, very tall, 6'7". But he's got good weight, 314 pounds. His RAS score 9.44, 40 time of 5.12. 3 cone is good at 7.51, and really good arms at 34.5 inches. Great in pass protection, average run blocker. A small school guy, needs to work on some hand placement too, but was a Senior Bowl invite and did play left tackle. So a possibility for the Packers later on day 3.
Yeah, I like Carson Vinson. 2 more guys on this tier, and then we've got a few green tier guys for you. This is a little longer episode, but there's a lot of offensive linemen out there to discuss, right? Trey Wettig, a former Badger, so a lot of Wisconsinites will probably know that name and have seen him play a little bit. He's taller, 6'7", 319. His agilities are okay, but he's a great gap and zone blocker. So he really is somebody that is a good run blocker. And if they want to work on, that part of this offense, I like him as a 7th round pick or even a UDFA. He's got positional versatility. Well, he started at right tackle, right guard, left guard. Doesn't have that left tackle experience, but if you're talking a player this late, somebody that could profile to be inside anyways, or be a tackle project, why not Trey Wettig?
Last one on our gold tier, and somebody that the Packers have met with for their top 30 visits, but projected to go as a UDFA. But Essa Poole out of Washington State, 6'5", 320 pounds, 7.30 RAS score, 40 time of 5.3, a good shuttle at 4.72, 3 cone a little bit, not quite as good, but 8.03, and then 33.5 inch arms. But outstanding pass blocker, 0 sacks allowed in 2024, but some cons on him. Terrible gap blocker, is decent in zone, but he did play left tackle. So obviously the Packers like some of his tape and what he could bring, and where he could be projected to go and get some good value. So watch out for Essa Poole out of Washington State later on in the draft as a possibility.
All right, folks, the tier you've all been waiting for, our green tier, the guys that we hope the Packers will draft because they're great fits. But I'm not going to spend like hardly any time talking about him because he's not going to be available. But just know that Will Campbell technically checked all or most of the boxes. But I mean, as a guy who's going to be a top 10 NFL pick safely, you would expect that to be the case for most NFL teams there. But I'll let Rob talk about a guy that I think is very much on the board for the Green Bay Packers and somebody who I recently mocked and love. But tell us about Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas.
Yeah. Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas, projected round 1 for sure. He's young, 21 years old, 6'4", 320 pounds, an 8.26 RAS score, 40 time of 5.16, shuttle of 4.66, a 3 cone, a 7.81, and then 33.5 inch arms. He seems like he's a good athlete, good pad level, great at the second level, and has obviously played left tackle. So I know that they're going to love that, but needs to maintain more blocks for him. But again, too, I think if it's somebody that you're looking for the Packers for the future, I think there's a very good possibility. And he's gotten mocked quite a bit to the Packers, including ourselves. But Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas is would be a good pick for the Packers if they take him in round 1. So.
A lot of people are going to hate it. Like we said in our intro, people want a wide receiver. They want an edge player, but the strength and the future of this offensive line is as important as anything. And I personally would not hate Kelvin Banks Jr. at pick 23 if we stick and pick there. So 2nd-round guy, Josh Connerly Jr. from Oregon. He's also young. He'll be 21 years old for a majority of the season, 6'4", 315. Great athlete, 8.84 RAS. He's got great hands. He's competitive, explosive, and quick. Some of his cons are that he's a little late and inconsistent with his hand placement, and it's kind of apparent that he needs to get a little bit stronger to play at the next level, but has a ton of left tackle experience. He was a Senior Bowl player. I actually think he was the guy that got blown up by Mike Green in that clip that went viral. But Mike Green's a freak. I wouldn't let that prohibit us from drafting him. Probably one of the first times he's gotten humbled by a player, which is good. But if we addressed one of our other needs and got Josh Connerly Jr. sometime on day 2, I'd be very satisfied with that selection.
Next up in the green tier, and projected around round 3, does have a ton of good positional versatility. Played left tackle, right tackle, and right guard, and was at the Senior Bowl. Jordan left me with the name that is hard to pronounce, but Jonah Savania. Again, probably butchered that. I apologize, but pretty tough last name to project. He's out of Arizona. Obviously, with Jordan Morgan picking out of there. They're doing some extensive research on some of those prospects out there on the West Coast, but we don't have an age on him, but he's 6'5", 324 pounds, 9.16 RAS score with a 40 time of 4.95, 4.66 shuttle, almost 34-inch arms. So all his data and the metrics for him for the thresholds pan out really well. He's a consistent pass protector with active feet and engages hands quickly. Some cons: he can be a bad gap blocker. Jack of strength shows at times and struggles with some inside moves too as well. But you're getting him around round 3 or round 4. I think this would be a solid pick for the Packers.
Yeah, I doubt he'll make it to round 4, but if he made it to the round 3, and that was the first time we addressed offensive line because we took a corner, wide receiver, whatever, chef's kiss. Charles Grant, and I'll apologize to some people that I kind of told earlier on X that Charles Grant was too light, but that was before I saw his combine weight. He added some weight. He was like 300 pounds even, and then at the combine he came in at 311, so that kind of moved him into a different category for me because he's closer to where the Packers like to select tackles. But he's 6'4", 311. He's from William and Mary. He's got great big long arms at 34 and 3/4 inches. He does show good lateral quickness. He gets to the second level. He's got a wrestling background, so he's kind of got that Bulldogs finishers mentality. A lot to like. I think Gripes right now, he's a smaller school guy, so we'll need to see how that translates to the next level. Needs to work on his hand placement, and we don't have full testing on him, but he is somebody who played extensively at left tackle, was a Senior Bowl guy, and would be a great value in the 4th round, maybe even the back of the 3rd if the Packers loved him. So look out for Charles Grant.
Yeah, so next up in our green tier and projected around round 5, did play right tackle, but was at the Senior Bowl. A Johnny Cornelius out of Oregon, almost 23 years old, 6'5", 315 pounds, almost 34 inches, but 33.5-inch arms. We're missing some testing numbers and agility stuff for him, but good lower body strength, good combo blocker, and strong in the anchor. Some cons: poor pass blocker, not quick in the first step, and can get beat by speed rushers on the outside. But again, too, you're getting somebody on day 3 like that. There's a possibility for him to go to the Packers. So
2 more green tier guys, and guys I would love in the 7th round. Absolutely love. But first guy's Dalton Cooper from Oklahoma State, 6'5", 323, 9.01 RAS. 33.5-inch arms. He's an outstanding pass blocker. He's only given up 3 sacks in his 2 years starting and 0 sacks in 2024. His one knock is that he was somewhat poor in the gap grade in the 7th round. They're probably going to try to, if they would draft him, they would try to work on that because he was a decent zone run blocker. So it's not like he doesn't know how to run block at all, and did play left tackle and right tackle in college. So somebody who could definitely be a developmental swing tackle for you on day 3, like Dalton Cooper.
And then last up in our green tier and projected around round 7, but Caleb Rogers out of Texas Tech, did play left tackle and was a Senior Bowl invite, but 6'4", 312 pounds, an even 9.0 RAS score, 5.1 in the 40 time, 4.49 in the shuttle, 7.43 in the 3 cone. A little bit shorter on the arms, 32.375 inches, but good tackle guard versatility, 55 games of experience, and a great pass blocker. Some cons: lacks initial quickness at times and struggles with guys with length at times too for him. But again, if you're getting somebody there in the back end of the 7th round or even a UDFA, great pick here for Caleb Rogers to be a Packer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's everybody. If you've made it this far and you've hung out with us for, nearly going on 40 minutes of this episode, you are now a lot wiser on the depth available to us in this draft. What I found is a lot of guys that I like, and not a lot of guys that I'm in love with. Again, here's the green tier guys. Will Campbell from LSU, not going to be a Packer, going to go too high. Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas, I'm totally on the board for the Packers. Josh Connerly Jr. from Oregon. Jonah Sevilla from Arizona. Charles Grant from William and Mary. Angie Cornelius from Oregon. Dalton Cooper from Oklahoma State. And Caleb Rogers from Texas Tech. We have more great content every Wednesday and Saturday, so make sure to check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. If you like what you're doing, please make sure, or like what we're doing, please make sure to hit that subscribe button so we can reach our 500 subscriber goal before the draft. And in return, you all get access to this great resource, right? Connect with us on X at Sounds Gouda. That's Rob's account that he handles, and I'm at Olson George. But yeah, as always, thanks for listening. Tell a Packers family member or friend. But until next time, Packers Nation, have a Gouda morning, a Gouda afternoon, and a Gouda night. Go Pack.
Go Pack.
Been wanted this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey.